There is a quiet illusion you have likely believed for years, that being surrounded by people means you are connected, that closeness guarantees intimacy. It does not. And if you have ever sat among others, listening, responding, even smiling, while something in you remained entirely untouched, then you already know this truth. Company is not communion. Proximity is not recognition. You have learned this not through theory, but through a series of silent wounds. You have given understanding where it was not returned. You have listened where you were never truly heard. You have remained present in spaces where your inner world was neither met nor seen. And something in you began to change. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet finality. Where once there was openness, there is now pause. Where once there was immediate warmth, there is now discernment. And where once solitude felt like exile, it has begun, strangely, to feel like protection. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They will say you have withdrawn. They will assume something is missing. But what if nothing is missing? What if something has finally been preserved? Speak to you this evening not as a theorist of the mind, but as an observer of the soul's natural history. I do not address those who count themselves by numbers, nor those who measure their worth by the density of their social constellation. I speak rather to a quieter order of being, to the one who has learned, often through a sequence of silent wounds, that proximity is no guarantee of intimacy and that company is not synonymous with communion. There arrives a particular maturity of the psyche, a certain psychological achievement, when the empath, once encircled by many, now stands accompanied by few, or at times by none, does not collapse into fragmentation. Instead, a profound inward event occurs. Something within them grows strangely calm, contained, and inwardly guarded. This condition is frequently misapprehended by the outer world, and even more tragically, it was misunderstood by the empath themselves in earlier years, when solitude felt like a bitter exile rather than a form of deep protection. You must see, the psyche does not retreat without purpose. When an empath withdraws from excess connection, it is not because the soul has failed in its capacity for love. It is because the soul has learned something essential about psychic economy. The unconscious, which possesses a wisdom far exceeding our conscious ideals, begins to regulate exposure once it recognizes a recurring pattern of injury. What appears outwardly as a thinning of social bonds is inwardly a formation of boundaries, an instinctual recalibration. The psyche declares quietly, but with finality, enough. What remains now is not continuation, but closure. And it arrives not as a flourish, but as a stillness that no longer needs to speak. When a psychological process has truly completed itself, it does not ask for further articulation. It settles into the body, into perception, into the way one stands inside the world. Words begin to feel excessive. Explanation becomes unnecessary. Even insight, once so urgent, becomes quiet background knowledge rather than a driving force. This is how you know the work has finished its essential movement. The empath no longer wonders whether something is wrong with them for living this way. They no longer search for frameworks to justify their distance, nor narratives to defend their quiet. The inner argument has ended. What remains is consent. Consent to one's own rhythm, one's own limits, one's own depth. Life from here does not become easier in the sentimental sense, but it becomes cleaner. Fewer entanglements. Fewer self-betrayals disguised as kindness. Fewer emotional debts accumulated in the name of being good, loyal, or understanding. And because of this cleanliness, the empath's presence, when it is offered, is unmistakable. There is no residue of desperation in it. No hidden plea. No unconscious exchange. Presence is given freely, or not at all. And that freedom is felt. Some will drift away, uncomfortable with its non-negotiable calm. Others may approach it briefly, drawn by its steadiness, then retreat when they realize it cannot be shaped by need or guilt. And a very few will meet it without disturbance. Not because they understand you, but because they, too, are no longer looking to be completed. The empath does not wait for these encounters. Waiting implies lack. They live instead from sufficiency. And this is the final correction the psyche makes. It stops organizing life around the hope of relational rescue. It recognizes, quietly, definitively, that nothing was ever missing, only misplaced. And so the empath, once fragmented by too much feeling, now lives inside a feeling that is whole. Nothing more needs to be added. Nothing more needs to be proven. Nothing more needs to be said. The question, am I lonely, no longer arises, because it belonged to a self that no longer exists. What remains is simpler. To remain true. To remain intact. To stand where one chooses. And in that, without spectacle, without validation, without demand, life at last belongs to them.